What's up everyone, Vu of Envu Films back with another video, and today in my Tube Douchey studio I will be talking about the new Samyang V-AF lenses. Right now the only ones available is the 24, 35 and the 75mm focal lengths. They will be releasing a 20mm and a 45mm version of these lenses soon. And obviously I don't have those yet. And these weren't sent to me by Samyang. These are actually purchased with my own hard-earned money. I did reach out to Samyang to see if they would be willing to send me some to test out, and they ignored my request. So that just proves to you that this channel is trash, so you should move along and watch someone else. With that being said, since you're still here, you might as well subscribe. Yeah, so what makes these things quote-unquote cinema lenses and be able to have the name V-AF, which means video AF lenses? What makes them any different than a photo lens? Well, the main difference is they aren't necessarily meant to just be on their own. Sure, you could buy the 24mm and use this 24mm lens for photo and video, but what's special about these lenses is its size. They are all uniform in size, uniform in weight, and design. Meaning the only thing difference between these lenses are their focal lengths. Other than that, the body, the frame, the weight distribution, the overall weight, everything about it is exactly the same. Which means if you're doing a follow focus on your camera system, you could slap this lens on and then switch over to any other focal length, and you don't have to move anything around. If you have these balanced on the gimbal, you could take the 24 off, put the 35 or the 75 on, and you don't have to rebalance your gimbal because they're exactly the same size, exactly the same weight, which is what makes them quote-unquote cinema lenses, because in that environment, when you're switching lenses on and off, you don't want to have to re-rig or rebalance your kit. I hope that makes sense. I hope I don't have to sit here and mount this on gimbal to show you, because you cannot visualize what I'm talking about. If you can't, you shouldn't be in this line of work, because everything in this line of work, videography, photography, whatever, is visual. With that said, how do these lenses perform? Before I move forward with that, this video is just like my overall first impressions of these lenses. It's not a full review because I haven't actually been able to go out and film something in a professional setting, something in a real world setting, because over here, just doing studio test, just pixel peeping and stuff, it doesn't really show me how well a lens performs. What if it's in less ideal lighting? What if I'm moving quickly? I need to be able to use this in real world situations to see exactly how they perform. But in the limited testing I have done at my house, it works really well. It seems to be just as good as any other Sony E-mount lenses. And this is what makes Sony E-mount great. There's just a plethora of lenses to choose from, including the Samyang V-AF. You cannot get this on Canon. You cannot get this on Nikon. These days you could buy any newer model camera from Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, whatever, and get all of like the necessary video specs you need, 4K 60, 10-bit 42, whatever. But Sony just has the best plethora of lenses, and each budget, in all budget ranges, and they all perform exceptionally well. Some may lack weather sealing here and there, but if you're not shooting with your camera out in the rain or going out to freaking Iceland every 2 weeks just to do a travel video on YouTube sponsored by Squarespace, then you don't really have to worry about weather sealing too much, right? So first, switch out this 24mm f1.8 Samyang to the 24mm V-AF T1.9, which is 1.8. And also I forgot to mention these are all T1.9, which is basically f1.8. I'm going to switch these out. They're essentially the same lenses, and I'll show you why right now. So the lens I was just using to film this video initially was this Samyang 24mm f1.8 photography based lens, and essentially I'm thinking the optics and everything of this 24mm V-AF version is actually the same as this. That's just my opinion on it, and just from the looks of it, I don't think you should notice any difference between this V-AF version of the 24mm and the standard 24mm f1.8 version of, you know, the Samyang lens. So yeah, we'll see. And just to show you, this would be the size difference between the 24mm f1.8 V-AF versus the standard Samyang 24mm f1.8 quote-unquote photo lens. So yeah, what did I find when I was doing? So pretty much the only real test I've done with the lenses is like an autofocus tracking test and some form of focus breathing test. So my main focus was just to see how well these lenses track focus of me moving back and forth. So what I did was I took the 24mm V-AF lens and I compared it against the 24mm Samyang f1.8 lens and the Sony G Master f1.4 lens. I just kept them all at f1.8 to see how they looked, and this is how they performed. And at the end of the day, I feel like the Samyang V-AF lens performed just as well as the Sony G Master for the most part. I didn't really notice any, too many differences. And then I went ahead and I took the 35mm Samyang V-AF lens and compared it against the Sony 35mm f1.8 lens, as well as the Sony 35mm f1.4 G Master lens, and they perform quite, and the Samyang 35 V-AF performed just as good, if not even better than the G Master lens. As you can see, the G Master 35mm lens is known for some extreme focus breathing, and I'll show you some samples of that a little bit later. But overall, again, the 35mm V-AF performs as expected out of a Sony E-mount lens. And then with the 75mm Samyang V-AF lens, I really didn't have anything comparable other than an 85mm Sigma dgdn. DN stands for D's nuts lens. And again, the Samyang 75mm f1.8 V-AF lens performed just as good as what I would expect out of a Sony E-mount lens with regards to autofocus. And then, so I went on and looked at the 24mm V-AF lens and compared it against the 24mm Samyang f1.8 quote-unquote photo lens to see how similar they are. And to me, they look quite similar. You just have to notice that with the focusing of the 24mm, with the focus of these Samyang V-AF lens, I don't know if Samyang did this on purpose, but they rack focus from one focus point to the other very slowly and very smoothly, almost as if you are pulling focus with your fingers. And again, I don't know if they did this on purpose, but I actually like it quite a bit for video applications. Now, I also did set my FX3 to slower transition speed so that it doesn't snap back and forth unnaturally. So this might also affect the performance of the speed of the transition from one focus point to another on these Samyang V-AF lenses. However, when I tested the Sony lenses, they did, when I tested the other lenses, even though with the slower transition speed, in camera, the other lenses did seem a little bit more snappy. The focusing isn't as smooth. Again, for video purposes, I prefer what the Samyang V-AF is doing. Maybe for photo, when you're shooting, for photo use, you're probably going to have to, you want like a quicker, snappier focus. But even in photo mode, once let's say you're shooting portraits, once you're at like one spot, I don't think it should be a problem of the lens focusing back and forth. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. So now when I test the 35mm V-AF and compare the focus breathing versus the Sony 35mm f1.8, the 35mm f1.8 is known to be a really good lens in terms of focus breathing. And I feel like the 35mm Samyang V-AF is right up there with it. Maybe it's slightly behind, but definitely compared to the Sony 35mm G Master, it is definitely a lot better than that, because the G Master, as you can see here, has really bad focus breathing. Focus breathing, if y'all didn't know what it is, this is pretty much when you're focusing back and forth, that the background appears to be getting larger and or smaller as you focus closer or further away. So the background does not stay a consistent size. But as you can see here, just overall the image quality looks fantastic. Nothing to complain about. Pretty much on par with any other Sony E-mount lens. And to be quite honest, the Bokeh looks very nice too. Yeah, very nice. So overall, in my opinion, image quality, Bokeh of these Samyang V-AF lenses are fantastic. Can't go wrong. Autofocus to me seems to perform perfect in this situation with not the most ideal lighting. Other features I like to point out about the Samyang V-AF lenses is because they have tally lights. So really quickly, this will be very beneficial with those of you who do not have an FX3 or an FX30, because obviously the FX30 and FX3 has tally lights on the body. But as you can see on this FX30 with the Samyang V-AF lens on it, you can see right now they have a green light here and a green light here. This just means that the camera is on, there's power coming to the lens, it's on standby. And when you press record, as you can see, now the lights are red. So it is very handy for those of you who are on maybe a Sony a7S III, a7 IV, and are using these lenses for video, whether it be for a YouTube douchebag talking head video like this, or you just, you know, from far away you have your camera set up on a tripod and you want to make sure it's on, you definitely see the red tally lights on the lens itself, which is a very cool feature. Another feature that this lens has is there are electronic connections right here within the lens, and I believe Samyang will be coming out with some accessories that you can attach to the lenses that communicate electronically with it. I don't know what those are. I heard rumors there might be some type of anamorphic attachment, maybe an anamorphic lens that has autofocus. That would be very cool. But yeah, I don't know what they're doing with that, but that is there on these lenses. And of course it has a 58mm filter thread, even though it might not seem like, but there's a filter thread right in here, which I'm actually using a mist filter right now on the 24mm V-AF lens for this talking head trash video. So yeah, I mean, overall, just from these quick tests and my first impressions on these Samyang V-AF lenses, I like them, and I'm looking forward to using them this weekend for a pretty extravagant birthday event. And I'll probably be using all three of the ones I currently have, the 24, 35, and 75, put it through its paces for that video, and hopefully that'll give me enough information to do a full thorough review on these lenses. But to be quite honest, just from my quick, you know, evaluation and just from my quick tests and slight pixel peeping of the footage, if you're looking into buying these lenses, I actually recommend them very much so. You know, if I'm looking at these lenses as purely at a performance standpoint in terms of image quality, autofocus performance, and obviously the usability of it for video in terms of being able to use prime lenses on your gimbal without having to rebalance every time you switch out your focal length, these lenses are highly recommended if you are a video debag shooter. With that being said, guys, I appreciate you watching this video. I hope it was insightful, and possibly, if you trust me, you know, it helped you make a purchase decision on these lenses. Till next time, lighten up.
Hey man, what gimbal is that?
It's a DJI RS3.
You want to know the top 5 gimbal move for cinematic filmmaking?
Oh yeah, sure man, let me see it.
But first, let me show you Storyblock.
Nah man, I'm not interested in that.
Okay, then let me show you Squarespace.
Nah man, it's cool.
No problem, I have a new LUT pack for the Sony S-Log 3 Red color. It's called the S LUT pack for only $29.99.
Can you just show me the gimbal moves?
Let me show you.
Hold on, let me show you a gimbal move.
Okay, how about you?
But first you just gotta put this down. And then you, hey, what the hell?